Well, hi everyone. Welcome to this Phase B lectures of the Self Knowledge course. Today we're going to be studying lecture number 20, in which we are going to talk about intuition. What is and how can we develop intuition? We recently started with the Phase A lectures. We are sharing those Phase A conferences every Monday and Thursday. If you are not yet part of our WhatsApp or Telegram groups, where we send the links to those lectures and written material on each one, you can find the link to join those groups here in the description of this video so you can receive this free self-knowledge course. And well, as I was saying today, we are going to be studying the lecture 20 of the phase B. The phase A consists on 50 topics on self-knowledge that give us the tools so we can get to awaken our consciousness so that we can get to fully know ourselves, right? And in this phase B lectures, you receive, 25 topics, more deep topics on self-knowledge, right? And well, today we will be seeing how we can develop a faculty that is actually latent in each one of us, and a faculty that is very important because will allow us to receive and to understand the wisdom and the guidance that our inner being is constantly giving us. That faculty, actually is the intuition. Let me this here. Okay, it's the audio is okay. And well, what is intuition? Let's start immediately with today's topic. What is intuition? Well, actually, intuition is a vehicle for expression of a consciousness. It is actually the ability to know but without thinking. When we learn to silence our mind, we can get to know everything, because when we silence our mind, we can connect directly with our inner father, who is a wisdom, who has his seat here in the superior intellectual center at the level of the pineal gland. All the wisdom is here, and only when we manage to silence our mind, the intuition can reach our hearts and we can get to know everything, right? Intuition actually comes to our hearts as a certainty, as something we simply know. Many times we receive warnings through intuition regarding, for example, some imminent danger. And if we follow the intuition of our heart, hi Carla, then we can get out of any complicated situation. But the important thing when intuition arrives is not to start reasoning with our minds, but to immediately do what intuition is telling us, right? If we let doubts, reasoning, overthinking, justifications enter our minds, we just end up losing the clarity, the certainty that we had, and we fall then into the confusion of the ego, and therefore, obviously, into error. So it is important to know that intuition cannot do any harm, since it is the only faculty that cannot be taken by our ego. Therefore, it is the only faculty that we can seek to develop from the very beginning of the inner work. The other faculties, such as clairvoyance, clairaudience, telepathy, etc., are faculties that if we develop them in our current egoic state, right, they will be managed by our psychological defects, and therefore they can lead us to make serious mistakes, right? That is why it is important to understand that it must be our own inner being who, as we advance in our inner work, give us these faculties. When he considers that we already have like we are conscious enough to manage these faculties. But being intuition Hi Dale, how are you? Being intuition not only harmless since it cannot be taken by the ego, but also very useful to receive the wisdom, the guidance of our own inner being. It is very important to develop it. And in this conference, well, we are going to learn how can we do so. But first, let's talk a little about what intuition is for. What do we need to develop intuition? Well, actually, the development of intuition brings us benefits both physically and internally, right? On the physical plane, it will be of great help when we, for example, are faced before a decision, right? Usually, we are faced with a problem or a dilemma when, in what we commonly do. What we do is to start thinking and overthinking and contrast this and try to make a correct decision, right? But is in those moments when we are facing a decision to take, we silence our mind, applying obviously psychological depth, which is the only true way to make inner silence, identifying what by self-observation what are the psychological defects that are taking place here, that are taking this side, and what are the defects that are taking this side, and we eliminate them. We reach this stillness of mind, right? The silence of our mind. And at that moment, we can intuitively feel in our hearts what should we do. That is the wisdom of our unconsciousness manifesting at that moment through intuition. And well, intuition also helps us to get rid of risks. For example, when we intend to take a certain way and we feel that like blow in our hearts that make us feel that we shouldn't go that way, that is actually intuition alerting us, right? Through intuition, we can locate ourselves when we are in an unknown place. Guided by intuition, we can find some place we're looking for also. It also helps us a lot in the work of sacrifice for humanity because through intuition, we can feel where to go to share this knowledge and to whom to teach this knowledge, right? And many times we are already teaching this knowledge, and right there we are receiving directly from our inner being in that intuitive way an answer or an information in relation to the topic that we are delivering, right? Or in relation to any question that someone asks us. Right there, in that moment, if we are quiet, concentrated, we can feel, we can receive in our hearts the answer. So it is very helpful when we are sacrificing ourselves for humanity. And well, through intuition, we can understand the symbolisms that are hidden in many ways, in many places in this world. For example, in sacred texts. So it is essential when we that we understand the need to stop reading those sacred texts just as dead letters, right? Because only through intuition can we really know the message, the real message that is hidden there in those sacred texts. And it helps us also understand clearly the different phenomena that manifest in the physical world. And that, well, some benefits for the physical world, but internally, in our internal worlds, it will also be of great help that we develop intuition, since intuition allows us to interpret the symbolic language with which we are spoken in the astral world, right? So we will be able to interpret our dreams very clearly, and even right there, even being, for example, in a conscious astral projection, if we are developing intuition, we will be able to understand the meaning of the symbolism that they are showing us there in the astral plane. But also, when we are practicing the reflective meditation, the development of intuition is very, very useful since it allows us to understand our psychological defects in a greater depth. and to be able to feel the relationship that exists between some psychological defects and the others. When we have intuition, we can easily understand, we can more clearly understand our own defects. And through intuition, we can also realize when recurrences come to us and we can transcend them. That is importance of intuition. And well, these are just some of the benefits of developing intuition, as it really helps us with many things, having that constant access to the wisdom of our consciousness. Now, something is important is that we learn to differentiate between intuition, between hunch and presentiment. The hunch is rather an instinctive call, more developed, in people who have like greater contact with nature and who feel instinctively, for example, when there will be bad or good weather, or when a person or animal is going to get sick, for example. That is something that is not related to intuition, but more to our instincts. The hunch actually comes from that learning, that through the experiences, through the different kingdoms of nature, we were recording in our instinct, right? And but what happens with this? That will never be as precise as the information we can receive from consciousness, right? The hunch is there instinctive, but it is not the wisdom of our consciousness. Now, when we talk about the presentiment or the feeling, we are talking about more emotional. Through our feeling or through our presentiment, we can feel, for example, that something is going to happen. I have this feeling that something is going to go wrong, right? I have this feeling. But this is something emotional, and since our emotion is actually invaded by many psychological defects, there is no like certainty in the presentiment. There is usually doubt, there is usually anguish, concern, uncertainty included in that feeling that we are having. Intuition, on the other hand, is like that certainty that we receive as an intuitive blow in our hearts, that let us know exactly what is going to happen, exactly what it is, right? Because it is the wisdom of our consciousness. So let's now see how we can develop intuition, right? Intuition is developed through the three factors of the revolution of consciousness, of course. The practice of psychological death will allow us to free and silence our mind, which is what constantly block our access to intuition, to that wisdom of our inner being. And the spiritual birth will allow us to heal and integrate our mind, our mental parts, right? And will help us build a clearer access to the superior dimensions. And the sacrifice for humanity, of course, will give us the merits of the heart to do that work. So actually, we're going to be developing that inner balance that will allow us to constantly access the wisdom of our consciousness through the constant practice of the three factors of the revolution of consciousness. But at the same time, we are working with the three factors. We can help like activate intuition by chanting the mantra O daily for 20 minutes. If we do so like this, we just, for example, close our eyes, we concentrate in our hearts. We can imagine in front of our hearts the heart chakra, which is, as you can see here in this image, is like a disc with 12 petals. And you can imagine that chakra in front of you at the heart level, and imagine how while you chant the mantra, it turns in the direction in which the hands of the clock turn, right? As if you were looking at that clock in front of you. This. And you're going to be chanting. You inhale deeply and chant elongate it, right? Inhale. Oh, well, you imagine the chakra, turning there in front of you in a clockwise direction, and you can chant this mantra for around 20 minutes. That will help you a lot to develop that faculty. That is, as I was saying, very, very important. That simple is the practice, just vocalizing the O in that prolonged way. Oh, and concentrated on the heart, which is our fourth chakra. There, we are going to be like activating our intuition along with the practice of the three factors for the revolution of consciousness. As you can see, practice very, very, very simple. Here you can also see how you can imagine the heart chakra turning in front of you. If you do that every day for around 20 minutes, you're going to be seeing the results. And well, that simple practice is going to be helping you to develop this faculty. And the important thing is to practice, to practice, to practice. Since knowledge only as a theory doesn't work at all. We need to put it into practice so that it becomes a wisdom in us. And well, remember that if you have any question on this lecture or on the self-knowledge course, you can leave your questions there in the comment box and we will gladly solve in any question you have. If you are not yet part of our WhatsApp or Telegram groups, here in the description of this video, you can find the link to join the groups to receive complementary material on each of these Phase B lectures and also to receive the Phase A lectures that we share every Monday and Thursday, right? And well, in our next Phase B conference that we are going to be sharing next Saturday, we are going to be talking about the intimate Christ and the death of the causal ego. A very, very important conference that will help us to understand why it is so necessary to take the direct path and to allow the Christ to be born in our hearts, right? And well, thank you very much for being here, for sharing this moment with us, and I'll see you the next time. Bye bye.